Hey everyone, Mitch coming in from not the Commander's Core studio with a ton of spoilers though. Yeah, it seems like more and more often lately when Wizards has their reveal stream, they're like, you know what? Let's just like reveal like, I don't know, 50, 60, 70 cards, an absurd amount of cards. So much so that it took me forever to actually get everything set up for this. And yeah, I usually do quick takes on individual cards so I can really dive deep into how I'd build around a certain commander or utilize a certain card for commanders. But yeah, there's like 22 cards I want to cover on this episode today. So I decided like, hey, you know what? Let's just group them all together. I'll give you my quick takes on all of them, talk about with the commanders kind of what I might build around with them. And some of these, I'm going to be completely honest. Yeah, it's pretty much my first time seeing it. So you're going to get my quick take, my gut reaction on these. So yeah, with all that said, let's jump into it. So, Massacre Girl is back, and we've got Massacre Girl known killer. Yeah, I mean, with a name like Massacre Girl, you'd assume that she's a killer. Anyways, a 4/4 human assassin with menace that costs 4 mana in total. Creatures you control have Wither, which means they deal damage in the form of -1/-1 counters, which, correct me if I'm wrong, but we haven't seen Wither in a long, long time. I think the last time was like Morning Tide, maybe? I don't know. Whenever a creature the opponent controls dies, if it had toughness less than 1, draw a card. So there is that little teaser text that we got from Morrow, and apparently it's on Massacre Girl. I was right that Massacre Girl did have some teaser text on it. I just picked the wrong teaser text apparently. Anyways, basically, this is a really cool commander, one that says, hey, okay, I'm going to be attacking. If you're going to block, you got to block with at least 2. And if you block with those 2 creatures, they're getting -1/-1 counters on them. So it's like permanent damage on them, basically. And if I do take out creatures, I am getting to draw cards. Now, just attacking with Wither creatures, not always going to get you there, obviously, because your opponent could be like, well, okay, yeah, I can probably just take 4 damage from Massacre Girl instead of giving you card draw and taking out my creatures. So I'm just going to do that. That being said, of course, there are plenty of other ways to get -1/-1 counters on your opponent's creatures. You've got ways to proliferate as well, get even more counters on them, take them out in that way. And of course, cards like Toxic Deluge is basically just a massive draw spell now too. Because again, if you're giving all your opponent's creatures, actually all creatures in total with Toxic Deluge, -X until end of turn, taking everything out, their toughness is going to be 0 when they're taken out. So therefore, yeah, you get to draw cards based on the number of creatures that got taken out in that way. So yeah, this is a commander that definitely wants to lean heavily into, well, potentially being aggressive with creatures, utilizing potentially lure effects maybe on some equipment, and then also utilizing proliferate effects, other ways to get -1/-1 counters on your opponent's creatures like Black Sun Zenith, those kinds of things. And then, of course, yeah, Toxic Deluge, those types of cards that can just give creatures -X, or minus a certain number to take them out. So yeah, this is a commander that has a lot of potential, drawing a lot of cards, doing a lot of crazy things. Yeah, Massacre Girl coming back in a very big way. Moving on. Etrata also coming back in a very big way too. Etrata, Deadly Fugitive, a 1/4 vampire assassin with Death Touch that costs 3 mana in Dimir. Face down creature control, have pay 2 in Dimir colors. Turn this creature face up. If you can't exile, then you may cast the exile card with paying its mana cost. That might be a little confusing. Basically, that means like, hey, if it's a creature, it is a creature. If it's not, then, well, you actually just cast it without paying its cost. So it's essentially getting flipped up anyways. It's kind of a weird way to get around like, hey, you can only really flip a creature up, kind of like it's a morph, it's a creature, but if it wasn't a creature, then it's like, oh, cast that instant instead. Also on top of that, whenever an assassin you control deals counter to your opponent, cloak the top card of that player's library. Correct me, the constable, if I'm wrong on this, but I believe, and there's another mechanic that I'll get to here in a bit, I believe that that's just basically take the top card of opponent's library, basically manifest it, but it's like a 2/2 that has ward 2 as well. Correct me in the console if I'm wrong on that. There's a lot going on. That being said, yeah, this seems like pretty cool. This is like, you can utilize kind of like upside down tribal shenanigans like Eddie uses. I mean, Eddie's probably gonna want this in that deck, obviously, but also, you know, assassin tribal in a way to essentially utilize these cards to get assassins through, and then utilize your opponent's cards, and then utilize those. And then, yeah, there's a lot of exciting things that you can do with this one, a lot of cool things that you can do to play with, again, being able to flip over certain cards. Again, like, if you manifest like an Omniscience, and then be able to just flip it over for 4 mana, and be like, oh, okay, cool. By the way, I'm casting this Omniscience for free, essentially, and not for free, for 4 mana instead of whatever it is, 10. And then, yeah, I just win the game from there. So you can do some weird things like that. There's a lot of different decks you can go with this, but I think most are probably going to be Assassin Tribal. Moving on. Kellan, Inquisitive Prodigy, a very interesting card. 3/4 Human Fairy Detective, because that's a thing. For 2 in Simic colors, we have another sorcery commander, adventure commander, I should say, that has Trail the Suspect for Simic colors. Investigate, you may pledge to land this turn. So this, kind of like a Rixmathes, is another guaranteed. Okay, this one's less guaranteed. A Rixmathes is guaranteed ramp once you're at 4 mana, right? It is basically like an explosive vegetation because you're getting a land to play that taps for 2. Basically different, but same. Anyways, this one is turn 2, near guaranteed ramp as long as you have a lot of lands in your deck, which you probably will with this kind of a commander to ensure that you can take advantage of that. And also investigating, so giving you a clue that you can utilize for some extra card advantage, which is nice. On top of that, of course, it is also a creature. 3/4 Flying Vigilance. Whenever it attacks, throw it to 1 target artifact. If you control that permanent, draw a card. So basically, being able to destroy your own artifacts. There are, of course, certain artifacts you actually want to have die and hit the graveyard, and that give you extra benefits as well. Or, yeah, just sacrifice, again, say a clue, and then you get the free draw rather than paying the 2. Or, yeah, make blood tokens, make other kinds of tokens, whatever you're doing. You got plenty of ways to take advantage of this one. I think the most interesting thing about this is, again, basically guaranteed, like, sorcery ramp in the command zone. That's, again, not guaranteed because you need an extra land in your hand, but guaranteed in the fact that you have this every single time. So you can really take advantage of casting it again and again and again, keep ramping further and further and further. So it's a very interesting Simic commander. Next up, Krenko is back with some really cool art. Krenko, Baron of Tin Street, a 3/3 goblin for 3 mana haste. Tap, sacrifice an artifact, get a +1/1 counter on each goblin you control. -1 would be really bad. Whenever an artifact is put in a graveyard from the battlefield, you may pay red. If you do, create a 1/1 red goblin creature token against haste until end of turn. This is kind of like a different kind of play on original Krenko, which in my opinion is still probably going to be a lot more popular than this one, because the other one's like, oh, tap, make goblins, tap, make goblins, tap, make goblins. Whereas this one's like, tap our goblins, get bigger, tap our goblins, get bigger. And also you can make goblins too, but you have to pay for that while you're sacrificing artifacts. So you need to set yourself up with artifacts. Again, it can be any kind of artifact though. Doesn't have to be, non-token. It can be a treasure, could be a blood token, clue token, whatever it is. Get artifacts out there, sacrifice them, get your goblin army massive. Yeah, I mean, again, it is going to be one that can definitely play really well into goblin decks as long as they have a decent amount of artifacts in them. I mean, yeah, Dockside is a thing, Dockside Extortionist, and that is a goblin that can make, oh no, it's not a goblin, never mind. Anyways, it is a goblin. My brain's not working right now. Anyways, ways to essentially make a lot of artifacts, make a lot of treasure tokens, and then all of a sudden, yeah, utilize those in some pretty exciting ways to make a massive goblin army. So yeah, definitely keep this in mind, not only for goblin tribal decks in 99, but of course as a commander too. Moving on. Kylox, Visionary Inventor. This one's really crazy. A 4/4 Vishino Artificer. Yeah, that's right, Vishinos are back for 7 mana in total. And is it Menace, Ward 2 Haste? Yeah, Wizards just really likes throwing Ward 2 on things, and apparently here you go. You get Ward 2. Whenever it attacks, sacrifice any number of other creatures, then exile the top X cards of your library, X their total power. You may cast any number of instant and/or source cards from among the exile cards without paying their mana cost. That is crazy. This is pretty crazy in that, yeah, I mean, it does require setup, obviously, to get creatures in play that maybe have a decent amount of power, but once you attack with this, and again, it can attack right away, having haste, you can get an absurd amount of things off the top of your library. So, I mean, I can picture most of this being like having certain spells that make creatures, or spells that make creatures more powerful, and then, yeah, just having some massive, huge, awesome, amazing, giant spells that you want to cast on the top of your library to get absurd amounts of value. Yeah, this one is a crazy commander. Definitely very Vishino Artificer. Very crazy off the wall. I absolutely love this. And I think that, well, a lot of players out there are going to be experimenting with this one and seeing what goes on. Next up, Lavinia is back. Foil to Conspiracy, a 2/3 human detective with vigilance that costs 3. Is this part of the clue? I think this is part of the clue, but they also showed this one off too. Regardless, whenever you cast your second spell each turn, investigate, tap, add Karlov Manor, activate on during opponent's turn. Second spell each turn, investigate. That is pretty fantastic. Again, if you go like Spell Slinger, essentially be able to cast a lot of small spells, small instants mostly on your opponent's turns, you can take a lot of advantage of this. With each tripper on the table, you have the potential to make 4 clues with this essentially. Now those clues obviously aren't all that great just on their own. It does cost 2 to sacrifice and draw a card. It's not too bad, but being able to maybe utilize them in other ways, like maybe having a Shimmer Dragon in play, tapping those, drawing a lot of cards, or just cards that care about the number of artifacts that you control, maybe some affinity cards as well. You do some pretty crazy things with this. Of course, this one does have the ability to tap for 2, which only can be done on an opponent's turn, which is interesting because it's like the opposite of like Axebane Sorcery Speed. It's like only on your opponent's turns, which is technically not sorcery speed. But anyways, being able to sacrifice your clues with this can obviously be a thing too. So yeah, maybe utilizing some untap effects could help with that as well to do that more than once each turn. A very interesting card. Next up, we've got Teysa, Opulent Oligarch. That's right, Teysa is back. 2/3 Human Advisor with Death Touch for 3 mana and Orzhov. At the beginning of your end step, investigate for each opponent who lost life this turn. So very easily, very easily, you can investigate 3 just without basically doing much. You can just have like a Zulaport Caught the Road in play, sacrifice 1 creature, or take out one of your opponent's creatures, drain each opponent by 1, and there you go, investigate 3. Whenever a clue you control is put in a grave from the battlefield, create a 1/1 white and black sphere creature token with flying. This build triggers only once each turn. Yeah, no kidding, you're going to make that only trigger once each turn. Oh, I mean, Wizards just likes to limit things like that because they don't like fun sometimes when it comes to things Johnnies want to do. It's okay. Anyways, they maybe should limit this though, just thinking about it. But still, I mean, come on. I at least have to get like an artifact sacrifice outlet in play to really take advantage of this. Of course, there's probably some loops that you could do probably with this too. Yeah, this is definitely going to be an aristocrat style commander, one that can really take advantage of things like this, and you can get a lot of card advantage off this as well. Again, with those clues, you can utilize those clues in other ways. Let's take, I was going to say Phyrexian Altar, but that wouldn't be it. That'd be Clark Clan, Ironworks, that kind of stuff as well. So yeah, there's a lot of value that can be had with this very low to the ground commander. Next up, Tolsimir, Midnight's Light, back. A 3/2 Elf Scout with lifelink for 5 mana total in Selesnya. When it enters the battlefield, of course, create Voa, I can't remember the name. Fenstalker, a legendary 5/5 green and white wolf creature token with trample. Whenever a wolf you control attacks, if Tolsimir attacked this combat, target creature opponent controls blocks that wolf this combat if able, which is pretty fantastic by being able to say, hey, okay, I can go wolf tribal. When they attack, keep in mind it's not werewolf tribal, just wolf. Whenever one of your wolves attacks, essentially you can be like, okay, cool, as long as Tolsimir's attacking, it's like you go block, you go block, you go block, you go block. So it's like kind of like a lore commander in a way, just like forcing not lore, being able to force blocks and take out your opponent's creatures, kind of like just dedicated like targeted removal in a way with your wolves. So yeah, you can do some pretty exciting things with this one. Obviously you're in colors that have a lot of great ramp effects, but also a lot of great anthem effects, help you get there quickly to pump your army, doubling power effects. You've got ways to, trample through on the damage. So yeah, you've got plenty of ways to really take advantage of this. And yeah, getting a 5/5 trampler for free when this ETBs is quite nice. Next up, Tomik, Wielder of the Law, adding, I think it was mono white previously, now into Orzhov, right? He was a 2/4 Human Advisor for 3 mana, affinity for Planeswalkers, which is kind of funny when you first look at it. You're like, okay, it can just cost 2. But yes, as a commander, that is where it would more so be like, okay, commander tax is a thing. So therefore, yeah, you could reduce that back to 2 each time, essentially. So yeah, just on its face, it's like, oh, it's 99. It's down to 2. I saved 1 mana, good for me. Flying Vigilance. Whenever an opponent attacks with creatures, if 2 or more of those creatures are attacking you and or planeswalkers you control, that opponent loses 3 life and you draw a card. So this is a very interesting one where, yeah, it seems like it wants you to go very much, obviously, Orzhov Super Friends in a way, have a lot of, you've got a lot of effective options when it comes to white and black planeswalkers, get a lot of them out there. Even if Tomik is dealt with, then you can just keep getting it back out very cheaply again, just for like 2 mana. And it's a good deterrent to say, don't attack. If you're attacking me, you're going to lose some life and also draw some cards. And of course, you've got other ways to punish opponents too. You can kind of turtle up utilizing things like Revenge of Ravens to say like, yeah, don't do that. Ghostly Prison too, just even deter it even further. And then of course, maybe some life loss doubling effects, as well as, ways to take advantage of drawing even more cards. So yeah, this is a commander that can definitely just turtle up, say, let's go Planeswalkers, let's keep things on the board, and then let's just say punish opponents. So yeah, it's a very interesting one for sure. Trostani 3 Whispers. Trostani is back. A 4/4 Dryad. I think it's the 3rd iteration of Trostani. Let me know if I'm wrong on that. 4/3 in Selesnya. 1 a green target creature gains Death Touch until turn. A Selesnya mana target creature gains Vigilance until turn. 2 in a white target creature gains Double Strike until turn. A lot of options with this and a lot of very exciting things that you can do. Keep in mind, none of these things say target creature you control. So you really could go pretty political with this one. Being able to give any creature Death Touch, if you have mana open, it's going to be very difficult for your opponents to attack anyone if anyone has a blocker, because if that opponent attacks you with their best creature and they're like, okay, like I can go swing at that other player, you could still be like, hey, other player that this player is swinging at, I don't like that creature they're attacking you with. Could you just like chump block it and I'll give it Death Touch? I'll give your creature Death Touch so it can take that one out. You're welcome. Let's make a deal right here, okay? So yeah, being able to say, hey, we're going to force combat to go the way that we want. You can also do the same with Double Strike again. If an opponent's attacking someone else with like their commander and it's got a good amount of power and you're like, I'd like you to take that player out. Let's give it Double Strike, take it out. Human creatures vigilance. You can make a lot of deals with this, and of course with your own army, of course, if you've got some really heavy hitting creatures, again, you are in colors that give you a lot of anthems, a lot of doubling power, a lot of trampling through. Trample works incredibly well with this, again, because death touch equals just, hey, put 1 point of damage on a creature, get through on that opponent. So you could even go Voltron really if you wanted with this one too. A lot of interesting things can happen with this one. I like this design, and again, you can go like political, you can go Voltron, you can go a lot of different directions with this one. Next up, Agrus Kos, Spirit of Justice, a 2/4 Spirit Detective, double strike and vigilance for 4 mana in Boros. Whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, choose up to 1 target creature. If it's suspected, exile otherwise suspected. A suspected creature has menace and can't block, which is kind of interesting. So yeah, being able to, I suspect you, and then come back into play, and then I suspect you again, you're gone. So yeah, basically, kind of a good way to remove creatures. Again, if a creature's suspected, it's exiled. If not, it gets menace and it can't block. So that can just be a way to take a creature out of the equation when it comes to them not being able to block your creatures or other creatures, and also of course being able to say, oh, or I might even suspect my own creature just so I can give it menace and help get it through. Double strike and vigilance is quite nice. You could go Voltron with this if you really want to, but also you can go like blink in a way to actually really take advantage of that. And also of course, if there's other suspect cards out there that are coming out, make sure you're taking advantage of those as well with this. Next up, Izoni, Center of the Web. This is a very interesting one. 5/4 elf detective with menace for 6 mana. In Golgari, when it enters the battlefield or attacks, you may collect evidence 4. If you do, create 2/2/1 black and green spider creature tokens with menace and reach. I think we're gonna get to a card later that'll show off this exact text essentially, but basically collect evidence means like exile not up to, but you have to exile 4 mana value or greater out of your graveyard for that effect to happen. So there you go. If you do that, you get 2/2/1 spiders, which is nice. Menace and reach. Sacrifice 4 tokens, surveil 2, then draw 2 cards. You gain 2 life. This seems like something that can go infinite not quite easy with this, with some setup though, right? Again, 4 tokens, they can be any kind of tokens, which is lovely. Surveil 2, that is, again, you take the top 2 cards, you can say, I like you, stay on top or go into my graveyard. There are certain cards that are like, hey, did a creature go into your graveyard from anywhere? Great. Cool, make a 1/1 token. I think that there's that bat one, right? There's the artifact that does that. There's other things as well. But also there's other ones that are like, hey, yeah, creature went in the grave from anywhere, permanent went in the grave from anywhere, other kinds of things like that. Also, when you're gaining life, you can also make some creature tokens potentially. There's ways to make tokens in different ways. You could probably go infinite, especially because, yeah, you've got access to an per session. Doubling season, you could definitely go infinite. There are ways to make tokens off of this. That's a lot of value. Again, sacrificing 4 tokens is a good amount of tokens, but again, there's certain tokens out there that aren't really all that valuable depending on the deck. I mean, like food, depending on the deck, blood, depending on the deck. But yeah, you can have things like Academy Manufacturer, which makes you even more tokens. And yeah, that's a huge engine for you, being able to just say, like, I don't like these cards. Go away. Go to my graveyard. Cool. Draw some cards. Gain some life. You have other ways to take advantage of gaining life as well. This commander, again, the mana value is a lot. But once you have things set up, you can go pretty crazy. I did say no per session. I messed up right there. There's no white in this commander. So yeah, doubling season, parallel lives, all the other ones that green already has access to double up tokens. Next up, Kaust, Eyes of the Glade. I believe that this one is one of the precon commanders. 2/2 Dryad Detective in Naya for 2 mana. Whenever a creature control that was turned face up this turn deals combat to player, draw a card. Tap, turn target face down, attacking creature control face up. So this is one that's very interesting because you obviously can play with Morph. You can play with, oh goodness, Manifest. You can play with a lot of other things that are getting creatures face down. They're escaping me right now. Of course, the ones Disguise, the ones from this set, Cloak, those kinds of things as well. But yeah, being able to say, okay, as long as I'm swinging with creatures and I turn them face up this turn, I can get a lot of card advantage off of my opponents by getting through with them. And also, again, when you have face down creatures attacking your opponents, it's going to be difficult for them to actually say, I want to block that, because they don't know what it's going to be. And also, you can just tap this to flip it over instead of paying whatever cost you have to flip it, like more for whatnot. That being said, you can also, of course, give creatures double strike. There's ways to do that in both red and white. So yeah, being able to give your creatures double strike and being able to say, okay, cool, now I hit you twice as hard and also draw twice as many cards. And also there's ways to get extra combats. There's ways to untap this to do it again. There's a lot of potential for this low to the ground commander, and I really like this design. Next up, we've got Mirko, Obsessed Theorist, a 1/3 vampire detective with flying and vigilance that costs 3 mana into Mirror. Whenever you surveil, you get a counter on Mirko, so that can be quite a bit. Again, building a lot of surveil mechanics into the deck. At the beginning of your end step, you may return target creature card with power less than Mirko's power from your graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter on it. Again, it means if it would die, exile instead. That doesn't mean that you couldn't just get rid of that counter in one of many ways, or like, blink it, or actually bounce it back to your hand, whatever you need to do. That being said, again, it is based on power, not based on number of counters. So if you've got any kind of equipment like a Black Blade Reforged, there you go. That can usually get most of your creatures back out of your graveyard. yeah, I mean, you're in colors that can get a lot of creatures in your graveyard, whether you are, drawing, discarding, whether you are searching your library for a card and like basically entombing it in your graveyard. Yeah, and if you utilize a bunch of Surveil, obviously that can get creatures in your graveyard too. So yeah, being able to kind of like pick and choose what you're getting out of your deck, getting in your graveyard, like maybe a giant Eldrazi, not one of the Titans that shuffles, but an Eldrazi, and then saying, okay, cool, yeah, my character's got a lot of power, let's bring that back, have fun, potentially even blink it, take advantage of any kind of ETBs they might have, but also just getting away from that finality counter so you can do it again. Yeah, this one's got a good amount of potential, and of course it can just become a pretty big threat in of itself, having flying and vigilance and being able to become pretty massive too. Next up, Morska, Undersea Sleuth. I think that's how you say that. A 2/3 Vidalcan Fish Detective, because that's the thing. For 3 mint and Bant, you have no maximum hand size. Yeah, I mean, most players who have blue in their deck tend to love that phrase, so there you go. At the beginning of your upkeep, investigate, so that's nice, a free clue each turn. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, put 2 counters on Morska. So this one more so plays into being, well, like a, let's draw a ton of cards, and then also draw cards each turn, and also maybe make this pretty Voltron-y. Again, when you draw your second card each turn, you get 2 counters on. This can become quite massive quite quickly. Again, with 1 trip on the table, if you're drawing 2 cards each turn, potentially once you're set up properly, congratulations, that's 8 counters on this, turning into a 10-power creature, nearly a 2-shot KO already. You have access to ways to get this through in either many of these colors. You've got ways to give it double strike. You've got ways to, proliferate, ways to get even more counters on this, ways to draw up certain cards. So yeah, this is a commander that I think is pretty interesting because it's like, okay, it encourages you to draw a lot of cards. It encourages you to draw on your opponent's turns, and it encourages you to smack your opponents for a ton with this. So there's a lot of things you can do with this one. Next up, Nelly Borca, Impulsive Accuser. I accuse you. I accuse you. I accuse you. Apparently. That's just how I picture this going. A 2/4 human detective with vigilance for 4 mana in Boros. Whenever it attacks, suspect target creature, then go to all suspected creatures. Again, suspect creature has menace and can't block, so having that, with Goad is really, really nice. Should have thought of that earlier, but yeah, being able to say, okay, yeah, you have menace, which helps essentially when you goad a creature because it's gonna be harder for that opponent that they're attacking, which is not gonna be you, that it can get through. And obviously, by the more and more creatures that you suspect, the harder it is going to be for your opponents to block because they can't block. Those creatures that are suspected cannot block. On top of that, whenever 1 or more creatures spell controls deals combat damage to 1 or more of your opponents, you and the controller of those creatures each draw a card. So being able to incentivize opponents to attack each other, or again, force it, that can be quite nice and drawing a lot of cards with this. So yeah, you and your opponents can kind of either work together or you can force that working relationship with a lot of goad outside of this too. Next up, Kaya Spirit's Justice. We've got a Planeswalker from this set. Kaya is back. 3 starting loyalty. Kaya has 4 mana. 2 white and a black. There we go. Whenever 1 or more creatures you control and or creature cards in graveyards are put into exile, you may choose a creature card from among them. Until end of turn, target token you control becomes a copy of it instead of as flying. That's quite crazy and quite nice. Again, being able to just say, oh, hey, a little token. You are, again, it can be a token, any kind of token. It doesn't have to be a creature token, be a clue token, whatever it is. You're a copy of that. Lovely. Plus 2 Surveil to the exile card from a graveyard. Being able to do it from any graveyard, of course, means that you can now just turn any of your tokens into that crazy creature. Doesn't have to be yours. Plus 1, make a 1/1 spirit with flying. And then -2, exile target creature control. For each other player, exile up to 1 target creature the player controls. So a pretty low costing effect, and one that can be very effective in saying, okay, I don't want this creature anymore, or maybe I just want to get rid of it and turn my tokens into it, and also get rid of your opponent's creatures as well. So there's a lot of potential for this one. Obviously, Super Friends decks might want to consider it. Who knew? Moving on, Axebane Ferox. I just basically want to show this one off as because it says a new kind of mechanic. A 4/4 beast with death touch and haste. Ward. Wizards loves Ward right now. Collect evidence for, again, I talked about evidence earlier, I believe, but basically, when this creature comes, the target of a spell or ability opponent controls, counter it unless that player exiles cards with total mana value 4 or greater from the graveyard. So again, yes, that evidence part is, hey, exile that much from your graveyard, that mana value or more. Okay, so basically, they do that, cool. They can get through on that spell and with that ward. If not, yeah, it's a pretty huge ward cost essentially for them to actually get through if they have no graveyard. So yeah, just definitely something to keep in mind with evidence. Moving on, Case the Ransack Lab. This one's going to show off to solve. Instant sorcery cards, instant sorcery spells you cast cost 1 to cast. So that's already very nice. Again, at 3 mana, that's pretty crazy. Also on top of that, to solve, once you've cast 4 or more instant sorcery spells this turn, so you gotta have a spell slinger deck to actually really get this going. But again, you've got the cost reduction on this. This can really help. Once this is solved, whenever you cast in sorcery spell, draw a card. So that's pretty crazy. I can see this one being very, very popular in Spellslinger builds, obviously having a massive card draw engine for you. Next up, Gadget Technician. This one shows off another mechanic. A 3/2 enters the battlefield, turn face up, make a 1/1 Thopter. How is it going to be turn face up? Well, it's got Disguise for Is It? You may cast this card face down for 3 as a 2/2 with Ward 2. Turn it face up anytime for its Disguise cost. So basically a new morph kind of mechanic. Basically, hey, morph it, but it's going to have Ward 2 as well. So it's the Disguised morph. It's hard to target. There you go. Wizards loves their Ward. Ever since Ward was created, they're like, throw it on everything. Yes, Ward. We've solved Hexproof finally. Moving on. Warleader's Call. This is an interesting one I'm going to point out. Champ for 3 mana, creature control get ++1, which is already nice. 3 mana for an Anthem. It's kind of like the original Anthems, essentially, but now we are also getting benefits on top of that. Whenever a creature enters battlefield under control, it's going to deal 1 damage each opponent. So basically, this is an Anthem, like Gaia's Anthem plus like Impact Tremors, essentially. I said Gaia's, but I mean, whatever the one is. Glorious Anthem is the one in white. Regardless, add those two together and you get this. Yeah, it's going to be a pretty popular card, I think, especially for token decks because it helps out in multiple ways again. Hey, make a ton of tokens. Oh, ping your opponents for a ton. And also these little 1/1s are 2/2. So yeah, it is a very, very, very effective card for those kinds of decks. And I believe finally this is our last card. Aurelia's Vindicator, an angel for 4 mana, flying lifelink, Ward 2. There you go. Wizards throwing Ward 2 on something else. Disguise for X3 and a white. When it's turned face up, exile up to X target other creatures from the battlefield and our creature card from graveyards. When it leaves the battlefield, return the exile card to owner's hands. So this one is another one, again, with Disguise. So it's like, hey, cool, yeah, you can flip it up. And yeah, it's a pretty big, beefy creature. I mean, 4 power, but still flying life like Ward 2, that can hit pretty hard. And also on top of that, when this leaves the battlefield, you give them back. So you can kind of like imprison creatures in a way, or actually kind of get some of yours back out of your graveyard. So yeah, it's definitely a card that I think can be pretty impactful in Angel decks and, of course, upside down tribal decks like Eddie's too. But now that I've gone through every single one of these cards, and again, we've gotten a ton of spoilers today. We'll get some more coming out, I am sure. I'd love to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know what your thoughts are on these. What is your most exciting commander so far? What is your pick for the most exciting commander out of this set so far? There's already, I mean, I think I just went through like 14 or 15, no, more than that, 16 commanders or so already. Whew, let me know what your thoughts are. Make sure you're staying tuned for your more exciting quick takes and spoilers. And of course, as always, thanks again, and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.